I'm here with Dr. Larry Sanger of Wikipedia fame, but turns out you're actually moving on to some new interesting projects. Could you tell us a little bit about the blockchain-enabled digital encyclopedia?
Right, so Everipedia began life not as a blockchain encyclopedia in 2015 as the encyclopedia of everything. That's why it's called Everipedia. It has a more modern design sensibility. It's a lot easier to contribute to, and it's about to become much easier to contribute to, as easy as contributing to Medium and the latest WordPress redesign, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we tokenize our contribution to an encyclopedia. If you write in an Everipedia article, then you mine, essentially, our IQ token.
Okay.
It's also true of...
IQ token, love it.
That's
Great
what it's
name.
called. Yeah, it's an appropriate name.
Yeah.
And so we incentivize this, public-spirited behavior, and you actually become a co-owner of the network when you do that, because we have a governance module, basically, basically the governance of the network is determined by the token holders.
Okay, very interesting. So now we're going to get some contributors are going to get a bit of a contribution themselves in the form of some tokens. Talking about governance model, how do we check for accuracy and stuff like this on the new model? I know previously you've been a little bit critical of some things on Wikipedia in terms of the accuracy. How are you addressing that issue with the new project?
In a couple of different ways. Right now, we have a layer of editorial oversight that Wikipedia doesn't have. All of the edits go into a queue. Now, they all appear instantly, right? But if there is some edit that is just low quality, then it will be downvoted if it's rejected by half or more than half of the token holders who vote on it. That, I think, provides one layer of oversight. Going forward, what we hope to do is to create a rating system. What we want to do is to have a one vote, one person, not one vote, one token system. And then allow people to identify themselves as experts or as having a certain nationality or a certain academic background or whatever. And then we will be able to rank different articles on the same topic in the network, because again, it's not just a back end for Everipedia.org. It's a whole encyclopedia network. Right, and then hopefully will be a credible way to surface the best article according to different points of view.
Right. That's very interesting. And now, speaking of the project itself, how far along is the development? When is it live? Will we see it's coming up soon?
So the basic blockchain code has been written and tested and has been in operation. Well, so we actually started when the EOS mainnet went online in last June, and so that part is reasonably mature. Then we started working on the front end, just completely rewriting the software last fall or early last winter. We've been hard at work on that. We put a lot of person hours into that with a reasonably big team. And so that's like really looking forward to the relaunch, which is going to happen in June, we anticipate.
Okay.
Yeah. It's coming along well. The functionality, is pretty mature. Has a few little issues to work out, but as with all new projects, it's going to be one of the easiest to use, most user-friendly dApps in existence. So
fantastic.
yeah.
Looking forward to it for sure. Now, decentralization as a concept, as a notion, that's a bit of a passion project for yourself. Also looking to some other avenues too, social media as well, decentralizing that.
Right. So I gave a speech a couple of months ago now, I think, at South by Southwest, in which I advocated for neutral technical standards and protocols that define basically how we share social media data. And I asked, just for example, in this speech, I asked Jack Dorsey, will you, Jack, make it possible for people to take their tweets and republish them in a common format, right, according to a common standard? Will you allow people to take tweets or micro posts, as they're called, from outside of Twitter and make them appear alongside their regular tweets, and not just reposted on Twitter, but actually served from outside of Twitter? Okay. And then will you allow us to have much greater control over our data, our tweets, our feeds on Twitter? He answered the question on Twitter, all three questions, and he said yes to all three. And then I had a conversation later on the phone, and he elaborated Twitter's plans. I'm not at liberty to like divulge what they are, but I found them exciting, and I hope he follows through. So that's an example of what needs to happen. I have been working on something I call a declaration of digital independence, in which the principles and the reasons for decentralizing social media in this way needs to happen. Now, I don't have any project going on this. I'm sort of neutral as to what it should look like. I'm basically boosting an alternative network, basically, that needs to exist. So in the same way that RSS defines the blogosphere, the blog layer of the internet, we need to have a social media layer of the internet. We don't want our social media data siloed in the hands of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and so forth. It needs to be owned by us. Our data needs to be owned by us and shared in the ways that we want to, and appear. We want it to appear in feeds of our own design, right? Using whatever apps that we want to use, right? That's how it should work. That's how it would have worked if people had started working on social media back in the 1990s, right? So the big social media, big tech, capital B, capital C, capital T, has gone down the wrong path. And I think blockchain basically is showing the way to how to decentralize our social media and maybe pull back on the reins and get this horse moving in a different direction.
Absolutely. Now, of course, data protection is a great use case here. What about censorship as well on social media? I mean, potentially a blockchain application there to clear things up a little bit, do you think?
Yeah, this is actually one of the things that I touched on my speech on yesterday. So the problem here is, as I see it, this move to censor or to regulate speech online in social media, to rein in hate speech or what people are pleased to call misinformation or disinformation. It actually is diametrically opposed to the blockchain and crypto communities' efforts to decentralize data and for data ownership. You can't actually be in favor of both. Right? And I think there is a it's a political powder keg ready to explode. I think there are people who don't even realize that these things are in conflict with each other, that there is an inherent contradiction and demands for regulation, really of any sort, even regulation that has the aim of making social media more private, for example, and less restricted in terms of speech. That still is going to put government in control of who can be censored and who not.
And the road to hell paved with good intentions.
Exactly. So we have to decide, are we going to move in the direction of digital individualism or digital collectivism, right?
Yeah.
We need to start learning about the political implications, the internet politics, essentially, that are inherent in these different movements, the blockchain movement, the movement to use NASs and zero-knowledge encryption on the one hand, and to regulate the internet, to rein in hate speech and other ways of regulating the internet, regulating privacy on the other hand.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I mean, blockchain touches on so many things, politics, philosophy, as we've just been talking about now. I guess a question for you, if you were to look ahead 5 years, 10 years, best case scenario, what do you hope that blockchain will change in the society?
It will return a lot of control to the individual. I think even people who call themselves socialists, but maybe aren't pure socialists, say they love markets, right? The power of markets comes from the ability of individuals to relate to each other and to interact with each other, and to enter different kinds of relationships with each other with minimal friction at will, right? But this requires trust. And what blockchain does is create rules that are fair and that everyone knows in advance, whereby these relationships can take place. It becomes sort of the technological innovation of greater freedom and decentralization.
Yeah, very interesting. Maybe even moving towards something I read, a term I came across rather, voluntarism, whereby, yeah, exactly this, blockchain-fueled voluntary interactions between people around the globe. Would you call yourself a staunch free market guy then? Maybe even anarcho-capitalist or something like this? Or
no, I wouldn't say I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I'm a libertarian.
Libertarian?
Yeah, a classical liberal. So I'm not a wild-eyed radical, I don't think.
Yeah. Okay.
But
did you used to be? Any Birkenstocks in your closet back home?
No.
I guess up in Alaska, not a lot of time to put on the sandals necessarily.
There's a lot of libertarians in Alaska.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you still spend a lot of time in Alaska? Is that where you?
I actually haven't been back too much.
Okay.
Since I moved away. I went up the last couple of years, but it's a long way away from Ohio now, and
right.
I'm married, and
of course. But do you think this sort of? You said there's a lot of these thinkers up in Alaska there. Do you think this sort of maybe shapes your view as well in terms of philosophy?
Yeah, actually, I think that
Alaska.
I mean. I would say a lover of liberty is something that both my parents had in common. My dad is an old-fashioned center to liberal kind of guy, and my mom is an old-fashioned center to Republican kind of gal. And growing up in Alaska, I think definitely, helped me to understand those ideas better than than I would get in other places.
Right, perfect. Hey, well, thanks so much for talking to us. Some really interesting stuff, interesting topics. Looking forward to the launch in June, and good luck with the project.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.